Distress, pain, disease. And no one knew the cause. Until in Holland, 3 centuries ago, a lens grinder called Van Leeuwenhoek provided the first clue. He produced a primitive microscope of great power. And with it, he revealed a world of living creatures whose detail no one had ever seen before. Modern microscopes show yet smaller creatures that Leeuwenhoek saw only dimly. Minute animals, for instance, a fraction of a millimeter large. More powerful lenses penetrate this other world still further. They reveal microbes, single-celled living creatures, so small that 1 million could rest on a pin's head, yet each one a unit of complex chemistry. Scientists today can breed many of these microbes in the laboratory, plant a fine streak of them in a nutritious medium, incubate them for a few hours at body heat, and those that were too few to see become a visible mass of millions upon millions. Since ancient times, men have used the chemical action of microbes without knowing it. To leaven bread, to make cheese from milk, to ferment the juice of grapes. It's known now that this unseen world of microbes acts everywhere upon our own, working in its countless millions in the soil to break down the remains of all that dies. Plants, animals, us. Working in the soil to create the food for all that's born. Governing the eternal cycle of life. Decay, regeneration. And within this other world have been found the unseen enemies of mankind, the minute organisms that cause so much human suffering, the microbes of disease. These tiny creatures are the agents of leprosy. And here are the symptoms that they bring. Twisted limbs, changes to skin and nerves, permanent scars, distortion of the features. No less than 10 million people are lepers now. Another unseen enemy, the spirochete of yaws. Till recently, 50 million people were its victims, through poverty, overcrowding, lack of water. Symptoms apparently not serious at first, but if allowed to persist, the later stages can be terrible. The microscopic worm of elephantiasis. And here, its effects on nearly 300 million men and women. The worm breeds in the tissues of the human body, may cause deformities that are irreversible. Beneath the electron microscope, science has found and photographed living particles even smaller, the viruses. The smallest forms of individual life with power to multiply Some viruses bring splendor to the natural world, but others bring disease to man. Influenza, smallpox, polio, trachoma. The trachoma virus scars the tissue of the inner eyelid, damaging the eye itself. You find it in the sunshine regions, southern Europe, Middle East. Wherever the climate is warm, villages are crowded and fresh water is scarce. 1 in every 7 living people have trachoma, and uncertain sight. And all this is but part of the worldwide misery that our unseen enemies inflict.
But the microbes don't have it all their own way these days. Nations have declared war on them, with a world plan and a world staff. What can they do? To start with, wherever people get together, microbes pass between them. Some are harmless, but some are dangerous, and that's how many diseases get spread. It's partly carelessness, partly ordinary everyday contacts, partly ignorance. And there's another way the microbes get about among us, through their insect allies. The housefly passes them on its feet and in its vomit. The biting insects inject different microbes into the body. Tsetse fly, sleeping sickness. Mosquitoes, elephantiasis and malaria. The tick, carrier of relapsing fever. The body louse, spreading the microbes of typhus. However the invisible enemies travel, it works like a game of ring of roses, an endless chain of transmission, passing on the microbes of disease. The point is to find weapons to break that chain, either in the body or outside it. Now, when a man is sick, he develops a certain resistance to the microbes that infected him. This principle gives us the weapon of vaccines. We grow the microbes of certain diseases in great quantity and then make them harmless. When we place the harmless material in the body, the tissues develop their resistance to the microbes without contracting the disease. With this weapon, we can immunize any number of people against illnesses like smallpox, diphtheria, polio. It was found that some microbes produce substances which are poisonous to disease microbes. It was this that led to the antibiotics, like penicillin. These antibacterial drugs give us, for the first time, materials that will kill microbes in the body without killing the patient. Look. Some of them simply stop the disease microbes from growing further. Others distort them into strange long forms, cause them to disintegrate, like this. No wonder there are now factories all over the world mass producing these antibacterials, because they've effected a medical revolution. To a doctor working miles from anywhere, they offer something he can use against infections he couldn't touch before.
Thailand is one place where the antibacterials have proved themselves. There's always been yaws here, and till recently there was little a doctor could do. But now they send teams out into the villages to attack the disease in its early stages. The cure is so simple. One big shot of long-acting penicillin. This little girl was photographed just before she had her injection. Here she is only 10 days later. Those horrible sores are nearly gone. Or take leprosy in Africa. There are drugs to control it now. People are no longer hiding their symptoms as something shameful. They're coming forward, asking for treatment. They can make people non-infective very quickly now, though complete cure is slow. A weekly sulfone injection for several years. But no leper they can reach need be an outcast anymore. Antibacterial drugs are working wonders in Europe, too. Against trachoma, for instance, in southern Spain. They believe in system here. They've trained special trachoma nurses to make a register of everyone. If they can catch the disease early, the treatment's easy. A smear of antibiotic ointment at regular intervals, and then perfect sight.
In breaking the microbe transmission chain, the vaccines and the new drugs have brought powerful weapons to the armory of medicine. But note one thing. They cannot attack the surroundings in which people live.
Overcrowding, tumble-down dwellings, dirt, polluted air. Wherever you find these, east or west, you'll probably find disease. Where men live poorly, insects live richly. The South American armadillo harbors the triatomid bug. The bug gets into the cracked walls of these mud houses, and like as not, it'll find someone to bite. Then it can pass a tiny, wriggling trypanosome into the bloodstream. And that means Chagas disease, and a heart damaged beyond repair. Other insects attack rich and poor alike. Dissect the saliva gland of a female Anopheline mosquito that's bitten a human victim. What do you find? The parasites of malaria in scores of thousands. All through history, malaria has brought whole civilizations to ruin. Up till recently, about half the people in the world were exposed to it. It killed millions, disabled hundreds of millions.
There are weapons now against the insect carriers of disease, long-acting contact poisons. Research has recently evolved a whole range of chemicals which remain poisonous to insects for a year or more after they've been sprayed onto ordinary housing materials, bricks, mud, and so on. The insects need only touch the chemical for a short time. Then their nervous system is progressively attacked. In an hour, they're harmless. In about a day, they die. Kill the insect that carries the microbe, before it reaches a human being, and you arrest the disease. These pest-killing chemicals have brought a new arm to preventive medicine. Take malaria. Spray the places where people live once or twice a year, and enough mosquitoes can be killed to prevent transmission of the parasite. Of course, things aren't always so straightforward. Look at Colombia. Here, the insects seem to gang up against you. It's jungle country. Tropical. Men pass to and fro through the jungle. So do monkeys. And the spider monkeys harbor a certain virus that's passed on to man by the Haemogogus mosquito. It's the virus of yellow fever. But people shift around. Suppose they carry infection from the jungles to the cities. That can mean an epidemic. There's a vaccine now that gives protection against yellow fever for 6 years. So whenever there's a market day or a fiesta, the teams set up their stands. And in the cities, you've got to look for a different mosquito that passes the virus from man to man, Aedes aegypti. That's where the chemicals take over, to exterminate the Aedes aegypti. When a yellow fever man knocks on your door, the law says you must give him access. He doesn't spray your house. The mosquitoes don't go inside. But he looks for any place outside where water could collect. Because where there's water, the larvae of Aedes aegypti will breed. With an effort like this, yellow fever can be beaten. But to do it, you've got to use both kinds of weapons, vaccines and chemicals, to break the chain of transmission.
It takes ships to fight the microbes, ships and aircraft, vehicles and stores. Anything from soap to springs and saddles. Whatever weapons you're using, you've got to take them to the microbes, and the world's still a big place. You've got to work out strategy, tactics, personnel, transport, communications. You think like a doctor, you plan like a general. This new medicine takes the research lab up the reaches of a Borneo river or the delta of the Amazon, the surgery into the uplands of the Sierra Madre, the clinic into the bushlands of the Sahara. Who does this work? Governments, communities, international agencies like the World Health Organization. If it's to be effective, they need the active support of every one of us. Before you start in, you have to make friends with your patients. You're a bit ham-fisted at first, maybe, but wherever you go, you must gain the confidence of the community. You have to infect them with the idea of health, like the microbes infect them with disease. Tell them what you're doing. Ask them to help you do it. You can't impose a medical system from the outside. There aren't enough doctors, for one thing. Besides, people want to run their own show. So the new medicine trains auxiliaries against the diseases of their own areas. You're getting a new grade in the medical profession all over the world. In many countries, they're the pioneers of a real public health system.
The new medicine attacks disease in the body, in the surroundings, but it cannot change the way most people have to live. What's so often needed is not drugs and chemicals, but bulldozers. This is where the doctor cannot succeed alone. He needs the economist, the engineer, the educator. Open drains, decaying garbage, rivers used for drinking, washing, excreting. This is the real frontier of medicine. As ever, the ultimate weapons are the simplest. Pure water is one. Pure, clean water to drink and to wash the microbes of disease away. Yet even now, pure, clean water is all too rare. Drainage is another. Drainage and water again to dispose safely of infected refuse and the body's waste. Yet again, drains and sewage systems are still a luxury. The techniques of good, simple housing are widely known. What's needed are the means to apply them. And beyond all this, a problem that will demand the hardest thinking from every man and woman. The explosive growth today in the numbers of the human race. Medicine is saving millions from premature death. The task now is to increase the resources of living for expanding populations. For medicine, already lifting the worst burdens of disease, is dependent in the end on deeper change. The growth of industry, the rise of trade, the creative use of energy and horsepower to multiply, expand, develop. These things create new wealth, open the road to healthy living. Without the increase that they bring, the doctor's work is wasted. Unseen enemies still threaten this child of our time. They will only be overcome if all of us, everywhere, learn to apply the fruits of industry and science for the benefit of all the people of this world we live in.